A 29-year-old American computer technician has become an unlikely fulcrum for the debate about the fragile balance of civil rights and freedoms in the Chinese city of Hong Kong. Edward Snowden chose the former British colony as the place where he would divulge a series of explosive secrets about America's monitoring of internet and telephone communications to The Guardian and Washington Post. In interviews with those newspapers and the local South China Morning Post, he praised Hong Kong's history of press freedom, popular dissent and the rule of law. Human rights experts and even some of Hong Kong's own lawmakers are more sceptical about the strength of these virtues in a city that increasingly feels the weight of influence from its ultimate national leaders in Beijing. Charles Mock is a member of the Legislative Council who represents the information technology industry.
Even though Mr. Snowden has been saying that he chose Hong Kong as a place to seek refuge because of our freedom of speech, our tolerance for different opinions and so on, but in reality, we in Hong Kong, locally, many people are actually concerned about these rights being eroded after the handover.
Beijing has so far remained quiet on its attitude towards Mr. Snowden and his revelations, which potentially balance the ongoing criticism from the US of Chinese hacking of both company and government secrets. Mr. Mock, however, is concerned that ultimately China could use the episode as an excuse to exert greater control over communications in Hong Kong.
If this sort of attacks from a foreign country is taken on in the wrong light, would it cause the local government or the Beijing government to have an excuse to be more, to control our internet and our environment more than before? It would be a terrible side effect and backlash from an American action supposedly to help their own national security. It would have a serious effect on us, not in addition to just talking about loss of privacy for our citizens and so on.
For now, Hong Kong has to balance the rights of an individual with the due process of the courts if, as expected, the US files for extradition. Mr. Snowden has been trying to drum up popular support in Hong Kong by praising the freedom of the press and the rule of law, and by giving an interview to the South China Morning Post.
In spite of heavy rain, hundreds have turned out to march to the US consulate and hear speakers demand that Mr. Snowden be protected from the US. However, Law Yuk Kai, director of Hong Kong Human Rights Monitor, reckons he will face a difficult time here.
If I have the chance to talk to him, I would say, if I were you, I will pack my luggage and leave immediately, rather than fighting the court for several years in detention and face all these uncertainties.
Hong Kong has a well-used extradition treaty in place with the US, and while the full court process could take some time, neither lawyers nor human rights experts hold out much hope that Mr. Snowden will ultimately be able to halt his surrender to America.
But in terms of protection to Mr. Snowden, I'm afraid that our law may not go into the merit of the detail of the case. Perhaps any legal proceedings here would only concern about the merits of extradition. If he pays too much emphasis on depending on the Hong Kong judicial system to protect his freedom of expression, that may not be quite achievable.
Mr. Law is also worried about the potential for Beijing to interfere.
If Chinese authority allow Hong Kong judiciary to do its job, we have a perfectly well judiciary, especially the top judges in the Court of Final Appeal. But if China want to intervene, they can set aside our judgment. In those circumstances, a court cannot help. It might well be independent, but it can be made irrelevant.
As you can see, some in Hong Kong care about the fate of Edward Snowden. However, their reasons may be as much to do with concerns about their own future freedoms and rights as anything else. Paul Davies, Financial Times, Hong Kong.